If you want to learn more about home brewing, then you need to check out beerloons.com. You'll find all of your brewing questions answered and more. Hi, everyone. I am your host, Mike Campbell, and welcome to Brewing Today. Today, we're going to start a new series of episodes on issues that affect the flavor of beer. Each week, I'm going to pick an off flavor found in beer, tell you how to create this flavor at home so you know how to pick it out in a beer, and tell you what causes the off flavor in the beer. On today's show, I'm going to discuss a sour or acidic flavor in the beer. We aren't talking about beers that we intentionally sour by using yeast or bacteria. We're talking about beers that have a sour flavor that shouldn't have that flavor. So let's start off by how to create a beer with this flavor with things you have at home. That's kind of an important part of this series is when you go through the Beer Judge Certificate program or the BJCP program, they have a kit that they can purchase that allows a group to learn what these off flavors are. And the kit, if you were to buy it on your own, because it is available to the public, you don't have to be anybody special to get it, is pretty pricey. And it covers the majority of the off flavors that a judge is looking for in the beers. But you can also achieve a lot of these same things at home, and that's what this series is going to be about. So if you really want to know more about your beer, whether you're just a craft beer drinker that really enjoys beer and really wants to know more about it, wants to know more of what people are talking about, as maybe you read a beer review, there's plenty of magazines that certainly do that, and obviously we do as well with our Brew For You show. And like I say, we're able to do this at home fairly simply, and so each week we're going to take different flavors. Like I say, this week's sour or acidic flavor, and we'll kind of go from there. So let's start off by how to create a beer with this flavor with things, like I said, you have at home. We're going to start off with a light American lager, and Coors Light is recommended for this a lot for some reason. I don't know why, but you do see it quite a bit as a recommendation. I'm using Budweiser Select 55. I'm trying to lose weight, so I'm trying to minimize the calories as much as I can. And what we're going to do for the acidic part is a white wine vinegar. So any kind of white vinegar that you have at home, that's what we're going to use. And the vinegar is going to give our beer, obviously, an acidic or sour flavor. Now, I'm going to be doing a little guesswork today because the site that I got a lot of this information off of, which happened to be the bjcp.org site, didn't happen to mention, or at least I didn't see it, how much beer to mix. It tells you the amount to add, but it doesn't tell you the amount of beer. So I'm going to assume it's on a 12-ounce basis, and we'll kind of go from there. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of the vinegar to the beer and basically stir it up, or I'm actually going to pour a little bit of the vinegar on the bottom of the glass. Like I say, 3/4 of a teaspoon, so this is important. So let's go ahead and do that now. We don't want to kill ourselves doing these off flavors, but we do want to get them in there so we know specifically what they're about. Okay, there we go. So we got a little bit of vinegar in there, and I'm going to take my lovely can of Select 55, which I've already opened. That's why you didn't hear it open. And we're going to pour the two together. Now, usually this pouring action is probably going to be enough. You probably don't have to really stir it from there, but we're going to go ahead and do so anyway. And because I'm the type of guy I am, I got a nice head on this beer, which isn't going to allow me to get all the... No, be pretty close. So again, you could take Coors Light. I'm sure Bud Light, any of those regular stuff will work fine. So, boy, vinegar really plays with the head of the beer. I will say that. So we'll stir it up a little bit, just for fun. All right, put the swizzle stick. Yes, I have a swizzle stick. And first off, let's, now that we got to mix together, let's smell it. You can hear that's the head of the beer going down due to the vinegar. So you can definitely pull out the notes of the vinegar in the aroma itself. So, um, okay, so let's go ahead and try it. So the idea behind this is it's going to be mild. It's not supposed to be in your face so much. I mean, if you want to, if you're really having a hard time picking it out, add some more vinegar until you basically taste the vinegar. That's the acidic flavor. And what we're trying to do is combine it with the beer itself. So you see what an acidic flavor in a beer is. This, you can still taste the malt and a little bit of the hops. Obviously, being Select 55, it's not a ton of flavor, but it's enough. But you can certainly pull out the mild amount of sour or acidic. It tastes like the beer is soured. So if you know what, Bud or Bud Light or Select or whatever you're using tastes like originally, then you should now know what it tastes like as a sour or acidic beer. So you can taste it just lightly in the background. You can just taste that kind of puckering sour a little bit. It's not massive, but it's certainly enough to let you know it's there. So now that we know what it tastes like, let's talk about what causes this. Now, the most common cause of this flavor is acetic acid, or essentially bacteria. If you have an acidic flavor in a beer, it is from bacteria. Again, there is yeast available to create this flavor, but we're not worrying about that on today's show. So if you have a beer with an acidic flavor, it is simply a beer that has gone bad. And frankly, there's really nothing you can do to make this much better. Once the flavor's there, it's there. You can't really mask it. You can't add more hops. I mean, you can try these things, but basically the flavor stays there. The general rule of thumb here is that the beer won't cause you too many troubles if you drink it, but essentially, is it really worth drinking bad beer? Now, in our example here, this isn't terrible. I like sour beers, so I could probably handle this, even though I know it's not correct. Some of you are probably going right now, this is horrible. There's no way. And tossing the beer out. And that's perfectly fine. That's the point. But if it's really bad, if you get a really strong flavor of this, which when a beer gets fully infected, it's strong, just dump the beer. And then the big key, especially if you're brewing this yourself, because you can have this happen in commercial beers, not very often. Sometimes there's a way for the bacteria to form in the bottle or the can or whatever. It didn't get fully sanitized. It's pretty. I've never had it happen myself, unless something was a problem with the cap. But I think I've only had it once over the years. But if you brew yourself, this is something that certainly can pop up on occasion. So if you do make your own beer, make sure to sanitize everything that comes in contact with your beer. I'd even sanitize things that you don't normally sanitize, like your brew pot, mash tun, or hot liquor tank. You only have to do this once, but we need to get rid of the bacteria. It's very difficult to find the source of it. The only way to get rid of it is to sanitize it, so don't be cheap with the sanitizer here, unless you want all your batches to be bad or sour. So how strong the acidic flavor is will depend on how much of the beer has gone bad. You can stop an infection by placing the beer in a cold spot. The closer to freezing temperatures, the better, but at least try to get the beer to 50 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. The cold temps usually prevent the bacteria from continuing to grow and ruin the beer. This bacteria usually grows very similar to any other bacteria in a petri dish. You'll start with a few white blotches, then you'll see what looks like spider webs running from one blotch to another, and then the top will form over with a white film. Let me say right now that the blotches look very similar to yeast coagulation or protein coagulation. So don't panic if you see some white blotches floating on your beer. Just monitor your beer and watch for little strings to run from one blotch to another. If you start to see these strings, then get the beer into a cold spot as quick as you can. It takes about 24 to 48 hours for the beer to be completely covered with bacteria, so you have some time, but not a lot. Also, even if you get some bacteria, it doesn't mean that the beer is bad. A small amount will only make the beer have a sour tinge to it. For most folks, it is easily drinkable and not that big a deal. If the beer really gets infected, you will know and you will not want to drink the beer. It will smell like nasty vinegar and it will taste like it as well. People ask all the time, how do I know if my beer's gone bad? Trust me, you're just going to know. A few other notes on acidic acid flavors is some homebrew shops carry a grain called acidic malt or acid malt. I've used it in a beer before, and it gave the beer a bit of a twang, kind of like what we're tasting here. Just a punch of acid. In this case, it is the malt that causes the flavor, and I'd only use small amounts of it because I don't want to overpower the beer. You can also create this flavor from long, low temperature mashes for those of you who do all grain. If you're making your beer using the multi-step or decoction method of brewing, the acid rest is something to pay attention to. The acid rest occurs from 86 to 126 degrees Fahrenheit. Most recipes will only stay at this rest for 15 to 30 minutes. So that is a little bit about sour or acidic flavor in beer. So again, most of the time you're going to experience this as a home brewer, but it does pop up out there on occasion with commercial breweries, especially if it's a brew pub. Most of the time, quality control picks it up in the brewery if they're bottling it or kegging it or whatever. But sometimes in a brew pub where they make the beer on site, this can happen. So just one step to knowing your beer better. I hope we've answered your questions on this topic, but if we haven't, then email me at mikec@beerloons.com with your questions. I will be happy to explain anything in further detail to you. We want this to be an interactive show with you, so don't be shy about emailing us, following us on Facebook and Twitter, and please ask questions. It's going to do it for our show today, and don't forget about our craft beer reviews on the Brew For You show. Now shortened to 5 minutes or less. Thank you for spending time with us this week, and until next time, cheers.